the incident.
Let's put up the image. We have the image. You have no comment.
I can't read Arabic. It doesn't help me. I have no comment. I'm not familiar with the incident.
Does your spokesman read Arabic?
Hang on, I have a question, Mehdi. You're a journalist.
Well, I mean, the second part, I believe. I mean, I can't either, but I also am not utilizing a calendar to try and tell everyone I've been doing war crimes justifiably. A lot of you know, Mehdi Hasan lost his primetime show, and all of us here, I would suppose, on the left, were pretty upset because it was one of the few mainstream corporate news sheeple media that was actually giving a very, very fair criticism of Israel and the Israeli government's war crimes and their current campaign of utter destruction and bombing of Gaza. And when his show was recently canceled, a lot of people, myself included, were like, well, I mean, this does kind of seem a little sus, you know, among us, as some might say, as the youth do say. And I was a little confused and sad to see it. But I got a lot of pushback from my initial take as to I think this might have to do with his criticisms of Israel. And that was that he was a low-rated show, and it's very typical that low-rated shows obviously will get kind of like flipped around. It's not uncommon for a show, especially if their ratings suck, to obviously get moved around by a network. And that is all very, very true. Networks do notoriously move shows around that aren't doing very well in the ratings department. And I don't know if that's why Mehdi Hasan ended up tweeting this out, which was, "Thank you all for watching the Mehdi Hasan show over the past 3 years. Proud to have hosted one of the highest rated MSNBC shows on the weekend and one of the most viral shows on the network. One of the most fun things I did this year was interview Vivek Ramaswamy. More than 11 million Twitter viewers for this interview clip alone. Wink. Wink." I'm going to file this one under shade. I think this is shade. I can't say for certain. I think it is very clever shade if it is shade, but I think it is shade nonetheless. I think it is certainly to be like, by the way, if the only reason you think that I was kicked off this network was because I just had shit, piss poor ratings, I was one of the most viral shows that MSNBC had on the interwebs, as well as the fact that I was highly rated on the weekend where I actually had my show. Sunday, June 18th, scoreboard. Fox News is #1 in total viewers. Mehdi Hasan climbs #1 at 8 p.m. among the adults 25 to 54, which, as you many, I'm sure know, is the key demographic. So very good defense that you should throw out there, and it certainly does fly in the face of the accusations that he simply was a ratings bomb that no one wanted to watch. Now, in terms of him being a viral on the internet TV host, 2 months straight in total viewers, as well as having some of the highest rated clips on MSNBC for posts on YouTube and the internets. That is important, but I mean, it doesn't directly go to the claims that his viewership wasn't very high. But I mean, having high ratings, I guess, isn't enough in and of itself to kind of claim why exactly he was gone. And this is one of the last interviews he ever did.
Senior advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He was previously Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom. Mark Regev, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Let's start with the tragic situation. Pleasure to have you on. Let's start with the tragic situation of the hostages. Hostage taking, a clear war crime by Hamas, and those hostages, of course, need to be released. Are we any closer to the release of any more hostages?
We surely hope so. Hamas, as you've reported, has kidnapped some 240 people. Unfortunately, today we found the body near the Shifa hospital of one of the hostages, a woman from Kibbutz Be'eri. Her name is Yehudit Weiss. She was 65 years old, a mother of 5. And so she's no longer a hostage. She was dead. The information we have is when she was taken into captivity, when she was abducted by Hamas, she was alive. We've now found her body. It was one of the results of the military operation today. Of course, getting the hostages out remains one of the focal points of our military operation. And we believe that by expediting the military pressure on Hamas, we're actually getting closer to the release of hostages.
So was it a mistake in hindsight, and that's tragic news to hear about this poor woman, was it a mistake for Prime Minister Netanyahu, your boss, to have reportedly turned down a deal at the start of this conflict that would have seen Hamas free women, the elderly, kids, in exchange for a 5-day ceasefire? Isn't that why so many of the families of the hostages are angry with your government?
Sorry, Mehdi, that's just disinformation. There was not a real option for a deal before the ground operation. It was looked at seriously, but Hamas put nothing on the table that could be worked with. And so that's just not correct to say there was an option.
According to that report, by the way, 3 sources who were there at the deal said that the offer was for a release of the elderly, children, and the sick in exchange for the 5-day ceasefire.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the military pressure. We are nearly 6 weeks into this bombing campaign and ground invasion. The Gaza Health Ministry says Israel has killed more than 11,000 people in Gaza, including a record number
the Hamas
of children.
controlled.
Let me finish my question.
But you can't say that. No, but you said you have to say the Hamas.
You can't say that. That's interesting. Excuse me, journalist, reporter man. You can't word it that way. No, you're only allowed to say Hamas controlled. That way we know that these numbers are completely fabricated.
Controlled.
You can say that. I don't have to say what you asked me to say. More than 4,000 kids, they say.
That's true. You don't deny that, Mehdi. You don't deny that it's the Hamas controlled.
I'm not
denying.
And
the health ministry is controlled by Hamas.
Let me finish my question.
You can, but please tell the viewers the truth. That information is provided by Hamas.
Okay, and that information, we'll come back to that information, but you've got dead Gazans. The American government say maybe more than 11,000. You've got a record number of journalists killed, according to the CPJ, a record number of UN workers killed, according to the UN, and yet Hamas still exists, is still capable of firing rockets into Israel, still has the hostages. You haven't found their big base under the Shifa hospital either. Your critics say that shows this war is a failure.
I would argue that's all incorrect, Mehdi. We're hitting Hamas hard and they're feeling the pain. We just discussed that a moment ago. Why they may be now considering a seriously hostage
hitting civilian populations.
Because, as I said, they've become humanitarians. It's because they're under a very, very massive military pressure. Look, this operation is not one that we wanted, obviously. This war was forced upon Israel in the terrible attack of October 7th. And we are fighting back and we will destroy Hamas. We'll dismantle their military machine and we'll take apart their political control of Gaza. That's good for Israel for obvious reasons. We don't have to live in fear of terrorists crossing the border and killing our people and butchering our children in the middle of the night. But it's ultimately also good.
But I mean, as it seems right now, you're kind of destroying everything, like everyone, you know, the civilians, children, everybody, cats, dogs, animals, like everything, it's just all getting destroyed. So yeah, I mean, I saw today Kim Kleppenstein pointed to a new article that shows that support for Hamas is suddenly surging in the West Bank, where they do not have control, PS, but that would kind of point towards the opposite of a desired effect occurring, which is kind of similar to the opposite of the desired effect occurring when the U.S. invaded Iraq the second time, looking to destroy terrorism and defeat the terrorists, and in the process ended up creating a whole bunch of new terrorist organizations, which they are still dealing with to this day. It kind of seems like the strategy seems to radicalize people rather than simply defeat or pacify them.
I hope you agree with me. It'll be good for the people of Gaza, who deserve better than this terrible, authoritarian, extreme Hamas regime.
The people of Gaza are still alive. As I say, more than 11,000 people dead, reported dead, 4,000 children. I just want to pull up on the screen. You say Hamas's numbers. I should point out, just pull up on the screen. In the last 2 major Gaza conflicts, 2009 and 2014, the Israeli military's death tolls matched Hamas's health ministry death toll. And the UN human rights groups all agree that those numbers are credible. But look, your wider point is true.
Can I challenge that? Will you allow me to challenge that, please? Can I just challenge that? I'd like to challenge that. I'll try to be as brief as you are, Serf. Those numbers are provided by Hamas. There's no independent verification. And secondly, more importantly, you have no idea how many of them are Hamas terrorists.
Wait, sorry, but you didn't actually challenge what he pointed out, because the point that he was making was that your numbers seem to line up with the actual Gaza Ministry of Health, which would then imply that you are pretty close and comparable in terms of the numbers reported, so that we can't necessarily say these numbers are fabricated, which would be kind of the point of saying, like, well, this is a Hamas-controlled institution, so we shouldn't believe their numbers, even though believing their numbers is something that has been done by multiple organizations, including the United Nations. But
combatants and how many are civilians. Hamas would have you believe that they're all civilians, that they're all children. And here we have to say something that isn't said enough.
No one said that. There's usually a distinction said that, hey, by the way, 2/3 of everyone who has been killed so far have been women and children. The point of that, and sometimes I think I don't like the fact that men and boys always get missed out. Well, not boys, sorry, but men get missed out in that equation, but trying to imply that those people are non-combatants so that people recognize that this is a heavy toll being done primarily, and it is primarily, on civilians. The people who are suffering are civilians. This is collective punishment of a civilian population. That is incredibly important to point out.
pictures Hamas wants you to see. Exactly my point, Mehdi. They're the pictures Hamas wants.
There are also people that your government has killed. You accept that, right? You've killed children, or do you deny that?
No, I do not. I do not.
Sorry, are the kids Hamas fighters too now? Are the dogs, the cats, like, are they Hamas?
I do not. First of all, you don't know how those people died, those children.
Oh, wow.
First of all, we don't want to see a single child killed.
Oh wow, yeah, that would be my only response to that. Would be just, oh my, I hadn't prepared myself mentally for this level of disassociation. To be completely honest with you, yeah, no, I know how those children died. They died from brutal death under crushing, probably from bombing, from the bombs that you've dropped. It's pretty apparent when they're pulled out of rubble, right? When there's a bunch of rubble, and then you see, like, I think we've all seen enough at this point, but there's never-ending supply of more and more footage coming out.
Okay, here's my question for you, Mark. You say, I agree with you. I agree with you. We shouldn't blindly believe anything Hamas says. But why should we believe what your government says either? Your military spokesman on Monday pointed to an Arabic document in the basement of a Gaza hospital and claimed it was a Guardian list on which every terrorist writes his name. But that was
Yeah, it was actually just days. This one, the internet debunked instantaneously because they were like, oh, that's just a calendar. Yeah, that's not secret Hamas writing or plotting or anything. And I saw the article that just got recently released in The Atlantic saying that Israel has turned the left into the new QAnon. And it's like, no, this shit isn't QAnon tier. If you're believing it, well then yeah, that would be QAnon tier. If you're just taking propaganda that is presented to you without any kind of criticism of it or critical thinking, and you just believe it because someone tells you, well yes, this is a hit list, or this is a list of Hamas fighters, or this is Hamas fighters signing off, here, clear as day evidence, and it's like, the bar is so low though, right? Because other people would find this almost, comical if it wasn't so horrifying to try and present this as evidence of anything other than a calendar used by doctors.
False. It was just a calendar with the days of the week on it. Your colleague in the Prime Minister's office, Ophir Gendelman, posted behind-the-scenes footage from a Lebanese short film and claimed it was Palestinians in Gaza faking their own injuries. That tweet is still up a week later. That is endless disinformation from your government, is it not?
I disagree, and I think on the important issues, look, I'll give you an example, Mehdi.
Yeah, I would like to hear the response to what exactly, are you going to retract that or walk it back, or at least admit that this in fact was just a calendar?
I'm answering your question. Allow me to answer your question. I'm answering your question directly, if you'll allow me. We originally said in the atrocious Hamas attack on our people, on October 7th, we had the number at 1,400 casualties, and now we've revised that down to 1,200 because we understood that we had overestimated. We made a mistake. There were actually bodies that were so badly burnt, we thought they were ours. In the end, apparently, they were Hamas terrorists. When we make a mistake...
I think this was also before the report came out from Haaretz that indicated that some of the festival goers had in fact been killed by Israeli soldiers and officers that day, which I don't know if that's been issued a correction yet either. That one's not a conspiracy theory either. That's just one of those kind of like in the event of a large attack being done by one side and then a even more powerful counterattack, then yes, there were innocents who were caught in the crossfire.
We admit it.
Short on time.
Why does that give you permission? Why does that give you permission to accept Hamas's numbers? I don't understand.
I didn't ask about Hamas numbers. I said to you that your military spokesman...
you were quoting to me before Hamas numbers, Mehdi. You were quoting to me Hamas's numbers.
Because the entire UN and the human rights community and the American intelligence community on Friday said they trust those numbers. But you're dodging my question, Mark.
I'm not sure that's true.
Why did your military spokesman on Monday point to a calendar in Arabic and say these are the names of terrorists on them? That's false. Can you accept that here and now?
I'm not aware of the incident.
Let's put up the image. We have the image. You have no comment. I don't
read Arabic. It doesn't help me. I have no comment. I'm not familiar with the incident.
Does your spokesman read Arabic?
Hang on, I have a question, Mehdi. You're a journalist.
Well, I mean, the second part, I believe. I mean, I can't either, but I'm not utilizing a calendar to try and tell everyone I've been doing war crimes justifiably. I guess that would be the biggest difference.
So if I've made mistakes, you've made mistakes, but there's a difference between making an honest mistake and between Hamas that deliberately exaggerates.
Right, but you understand then that using that mistake, it's not an oopsie. It's not a teeny little, like, oh, a faux pas, if you will. That was utilized as propaganda to justify war crimes. So the stakes are actually quite high. And then to take that and then say, hey, by the way, this is direct evidence that this was a Hamas headquarters, as we told you, or now it's a Hamas node, or now it simply was a handful of Hamas fighters who on camera were dropping off wounded people in this hospital. Who knew that people would take wounded people to a hospital? And so, yes, it has changed and evolved over time, but that's kind of huge, right?
Numbers to suit its propaganda purposes. There's a huge difference.
So it sounds like
it's like
so hold on. You said propaganda. Can we just deal with your colleague Ophir Gendelman's tweet? It's still up 7 days later. Why has it not come down? It's a Lebanese short film. We can put it on screen. It's not Palestinians faking their own injuries. Can we own up to that mistake and take that down? Is that not propaganda?
Once again, I understand that was also a mistake. And
so why is it still up 7 days later?
I'll speak to Ophir about it if you like.
These are pretty huge mistakes, my dude. You know, it's not like a typo. it's not like, oh yeah, you actually cited the source incorrectly or something like that. Like, this is straight the manipulation of propaganda by using an incorrect source and then lying about it and then maintaining that lie by leaving it up by official government accounts.
I'll speak to Ophir about it if you like. He's a friend of mine and a colleague. I quite like him. He's a good man. He's actually very effective. Why is he effective?
Well,
he speaks mother tongue level Arabic.
Tweet, Mark.
We don't deliberately kill anyone. That's not a fair question. What we are trying to do is eliminate this threat.
Would you accidentally kill Israeli human shields? I'm asking a very simple question.
We wouldn't want to accidentally kill anyone. We wouldn't accidentally, no, we wouldn't accidentally want to kill anyone.
Understood.
But can I tell you, when the West fought ISIS, when the West fought ISIS in Fallujah and in Mosul, also there, ISIS used human shields. They actually used a hospital, I believe, in Mosul. You probably know this as well as I do.
I do.
Also, how did ISIS come to be, by the way? Was that, like, just kind of people came together and then they were all like, death to America? And then everyone was like, that sounds like a cool idea. And then, like, let's wage a war against America. Okay. And then that's how it formed.
And what America did was wrong, I think,
and the West was fought. But I think it's actually, I think America did the right thing. You had to defeat these brutal terrorists.
Would you apply the tactics of God?
But see, that's interesting because, like, if he's like that, I think America did the right thing in the second invasion of Iraq, because at the end of the day, you had to get in there to destroy those brutal terrorists. And yes, that was kind of the story that was told. At the end of the day, Saddam Hussein did have supposed weapons of mass destruction that he was ready to use on the world. If he wasn't stopped, then it was going to hurt American interests. So it's justifiable to invade a sovereign country, destabilize it, kill thousands of civilians upon the way, bomb a lot of parts, destroy infrastructure, and completely destabilize the country. In that vacuum, new terrorist organizations emerge, and they've been emerging ever since. You know, at first it was like, yes, we now have to defeat ISIS. Well, we now have to defeat ISIL. Well, we now have to defeat ISIS-K. We have to defeat ISIL-K. We have to defeat ISIL. Like, I don't even know what version of it we're currently, America, I should say, is currently fighting at any given time. But that was, I'd say, objectively a disaster, which I think most people now in hindsight, even conservatives and Republicans, except if they're like dinos or just diehard neocons, are like, yeah, the costs of that war, I would say, far outweigh the benefits, and any benefit at the end of the day to the national security of the United States.
In Israel, it's a simple question.
We wouldn't allow them to take over a school in the first place. We'd send in special forces and we'd take out the terrorists.
I know you're over on. You're out of time.
I did answer your question. Why did you say I did not answer your question? You didn't answer. I didn't answer it the way. I didn't answer it in the way you wanted me to answer it. That's the problem. I didn't answer it the way you wanted me to answer it. We would send in special forces, and we would neutralize the terrorists. That's what we've done in the past. You know we've done it that way. Yes.
Last question for you. You've got ministers in your government. I have to ask this question. Amichai Eliyahu, who said Israel should consider dropping a nuclear bomb on Gaza, which would kill over 2 million people. He's still in your government. Avi Dichter, another member of your government, went on TV and said this is Gaza Nakba 2023. And your boss, Benjamin Netanyahu, invoked Amalek, which was a biblical call for killing every man, woman and child. Mark, do you understand why that cannot be heard as anything other than calls for genocide or ethnic cleansing around the world?
So will you allow me to answer?
Of course.
Number one, that minister was reprimanded by the Prime Minister, Eliyahu, and he was told very forthrightly he's suspended from the government, and if he makes any statements like that again, he's fired. on the Avi Dichter, I think I actually agree with what he said. The Nakba, the tragedy that was brought upon the Palestinians in 1947-48 was because of an extreme irresponsible leadership that wasn't willing to compromise. And Hamas is doing the same thing to Palestinians in Gaza. Terrible. And if they are creating a catastrophe, it's because of Hamas. And on the third point, Amalek was known in Jewish...
It's kind of like stop Hamassing yourself then.
Jewish history, and I'm sure you know this, that they attacked from behind. They killed the women and the children and the people who were sick, who couldn't walk quickly. That's why Amalek is in the Bible, is so condemned, because they attacked the innocent.
Correct you here.
No, I know my... Don't tell me I don't know my Jewish history. I know my Jewish history.
Go and attack the Amaleks. Do not spare them. Put to death men, women, and children. Is that what you're doing in Gaza? That's what the Prime Minister invoked.
No. He was describing, first of all, no one in Israel is calling for women and children to be killed. On the contrary. How can you say
your Heritage Minister did. He said nuke Gaza.
No. What we have said is we're going to wipe out Hamas, and we are going to wipe out Hamas. But
so, yeah, I mean, it's as clear as day. You have to imagine that everything is Hamas, right? Like every living creature on the face of the earth located within Gaza is Hamas. And then, yeah, I mean, you are effectively defeating and destroying Hamas every single day.
For war, it's a time for victory. And when that's over, with Hamas defeated, with Hamas destroyed, when you've taken out the most extreme...
So, I mean, this was, I believe, a couple weeks ago when this aired, prior to the cancellation of the Mehdi Hasan show. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. And at this point now, where the ceasefire has ended, there's current bombing campaigns, and there was, of course, the heavy toll that's been taken as people are now trying to flee to the southern parts of Gaza near the Rafah border. Those are now being bombed as well. And there is the same cycle that's being done where it's like, hey, we're going to distribute a whole bunch of pamphlets, or we're going to warn people you need to leave this area before we start destroying it utterly. When people have nowhere to go, I mean, those pamphlets, even if they are distributed effectively, are basically telling people to continuously run within a smaller and smaller cage. Right? Every single day, it's like, well, the North has been like completely and utterly devastatingly destroyed, and people are being told not to return to North, or they could get shot, and then people returning to their homes have been shot. And now it's like, well, okay, well, you're supposed to flee further to the south, go to the Rafah border crossing, when that border is not open for individuals to suddenly leave. Egypt is not taking in millions of people from Gaza right now. It's just as dire as it could possibly get. It's just getting infinitely more horrifying by the day. This interview, it's incredibly powerful to see on a network like MSNBC. I'll say that much. I have no evidence, just going to be completely clear here, I have absolutely no evidence as to what the reason was of Mehdi Hasan's show getting canceled. It could be, I don't think it's because of ratings. I mean, if he was just crushing it for a weekend show, because it was on the weekends, right? For a weekend show in that key demographic, the 20 to 50 demographic of viewers, one of the highest rating shows in his field, then it's not simply about ratings. It's about more than that. Could it be, some of his interviews, some of his episodes? We watched his special on whether or not Israel was committing genocide, which I thought was very powerful, again, to see on a mainstream media network.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Can you please hit the like and subscribe button and maybe leave a comment? It really does help the videos out. But first, the people who produce everything you see before you and make this entire channel possible: Amazing Fletch, Anna Loves Riley, Ariane McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Puppy, Quiet 185, Rachel K, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby K, Cernicus, Spinach Monster, Stellar Vision, Sebastian Demel, Trevbot.exe, Words Greenwood, and Travis McClinton. And also, thank you to every other person who helps fund this show. Their names are on the screen right now. It would not be possible without every single one of them. We cannot thank you enough. And if you want to join the Patreon, please come to patreon.com/theserfs and help us exist.